We got one person online. The workload is enough for like 10 users. I think we got a hacker.
Shall we play a game?
What are they doing to him? Breaking into his mind. It's like hacking a computer. All it takes is time.
Red alert. All hands to battle stations.
Hello, friend.
Welcome to Red Spy 365.
Shall we play a game?
Okay, Ian. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Well, nearly afternoon over here.
Afternoon, yeah. I know it's 6 o'clock here. Horrible. That and I had a power outage around about 8 o'clock last night, so that was useful. Get anything done. So one of the things I've seen is, why is there a lot of military in security? I mean, is it something?
A lot of what we get taught is quite a lot of technical teachings especially in the Navy, where we had our background from. I mean, from a very I started off as a radio operator, and I was getting, from an early age of 18, getting involved with communications, short distance, long distance, tactical and strategic, and it gives you a good background knowledge of all the theory of radio communications.
Especially now you're like 400 billion years old.
That's it, yeah.
You and Marconi was working out how to set these things up, I remember.
Well, yeah. Me and him sat down quite a bit in Italy and back in the United Kingdom. But I progressed from the radio operator into becoming a communications technician when I got myself up to senior 8 status, and then the theory really did start to get a lot more intense, and the practical as well.
Do you think that's why we can't get stressed out anymore? Because I think the training we went through was just phenomenal. I think that's one of the good things about the military, though, isn't it? You get really good training.
Well, if you remember the training we done for a communications technician, it was one failure. That's all you was allowed, and we had weekly exams every Friday. Especially on optech theory, it was the big major exams. I think we had 4 of them, and then the final. And the pass mark then was I think it was 70%, wasn't it, if I remember right? But they are highly, well, some of the questions were university master's degree questions, really, that we had to pull answers out to. So
that was interesting.
There was a lot of people that did fail that final exam, but we flew through it first time. So.
I know. Ironically, I dropped out of university to join the Navy because I had enough of education, and then spent the next 3.5 years basically in a classroom, of which, when I came out, I got a piece of paper that said I could type.
Yes, they luckily enough, after you left there, and things did structure to dovetail it into line with civilian street.
That's handy. I'm glad they
more
saw
than what
it.
Giving you a piece of paper, very generic as well.
Yeah, I remember the sort of phrase.
I know you were better than that.
The phrase was kind of like, "Hey, we can't tell people what you did," and I'm like, "But it just says I could type." And it's like, yeah, good, isn't it?
I think they were put together something like in the middle 70s or something like that, and they didn't change them a great deal, and they didn't reflect anything we were doing.
I think as well, you see a lot of the terminology sort of come across. I guess that's because of, I truly believe, puzzle solving is kind of like key. You kind of learn how to learn when you're in the military as well, and that's something that never really got taught me when I was at school. I always felt that I just had to do rote memorization. If someone gave me a list, I just had to learn it by reading it over and over again. And it was only like as you learn, hey, okay, you can use patterns, you can use, words, word association, imaging, that kind of thing. And to me, I was like, okay, why didn't someone teach me that way back to, learn how to learn? That's kind of important.
Yeah, that quite a lot of the training in the military was, the theory-wise, just basically the theory gave you the tool set to go out and dynamically think, and quite a lot of the data we were trawling as communications technicians, it is basically you're using your experience to open up and investigate, and as you say, it's like a jigsaw puzzle putting together.
Yeah, and I think as well,
you've got to think 3-dimensional, and that's where the practical work comes in, because it's all right learning lists and some of these exams that they do out there, but at the end of the day, it's just a memory test. You've got to be a little bit more wisdom to actually using the technical information and then using it in practical, go and investigate and find out where faults are, from communication fields through to penetration testing, putting the pieces together. So you're working dynamically and agile, I'd say. That's the things that the military taught us at a very early age, really, and right through to the time when I left as a warrant officer, when you got other, should I say, feathers to your remit of work. Instead of just doing the practical, you're doing the management side as well. All very interesting stuff, but it all plays seed when you move on to Civvy Street eventually.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, it's the application of and I guess when you think back, a lot of what we did is very similar to pen testing. It's, you're taking the data, you're taking those data sets, you're using your own skill sets, and again, that becomes more of an art form. When you talk, you always hear people talking about pen testing being an art form, and it's an art form in the sense that, two pen testers can look at the same information and come to completely different conclusions, or maybe different ways. There is a potential for process, but again, there is certain much of process in it, but sometimes it's just that X factor, thinking outside the box, and that's really, I think, one of the things that we was learnt was, just think outside. You're basically, I think part of it is because you're responsible. The responsibility is given to you, so therefore, because you're responsible for it, you've got to come up with stuff. And they hold your feet to the fire on that as well.
Absolutely. When I was working in computer network exploitation in my later days, of working for GCHQ, you would see, quite a lot of it can be subjective, but you're putting the data together. And what you're coming up with, we used to work an awful lot with the Americans and Australians in the Five Eyes community. And the Americans would come up with something a little bit different to what we've come, but basically saying the same sort of information, but maybe a little bit more depth, maybe a little bit granular as well. So, yeah.
So for people that don't know, I've known Ian for a long time. Me and you go way, way back. Basically to our days on,
early 90s, if I remember right.
Yeah, up at NSGA Edzell, intercept station up there, and then sort of later days on the Sheffield doing counter-drug ops in the Caribbean. So me and you go way back. And Ian's probably got more stories on me, so I have to be nice.
Yes.
Because I do remember, the odd beer every now and then.
Well, you left in 2000, I think, wasn't it, after we'd done the Caribbean ops?
It was
and
kind
I
of
left the Royal Navy 2007. I went to work for Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, and I was always one of these people. I was always looking for, trying to join up in danger, whereas Ian never looks for danger and always finds it.
Do I have to really go on about this? Yes, well, I have quite
he jingles when he walks.
Combatant duties. It started off at the age of 19, Falkland Wars on HMS Hermes, and that was very, should I say, enlightening. I used to work on the crypto cell of HMS Hermes, and many a times, well, not many a times, I was a couple of occasions when I would talk to the Prime Minister at the time, Margaret Thatcher, who wanted to talk to the Admiral. I was the sort of man in the middle for receiving information from Northwood on a submarine system, and then because we were so far out, Conqueror would put up our aerial, should I say a mast aerial, 6 foot under the water, and we'd transmit it out on our system that was basically going to sink the Belgrano. So that was always sticks in the back of my mind, typing up that signal to convey to the Conqueror, giving her permission to go and take that one out. And then I had a little bit of a lapse after that. It wasn't until I was on HMS Manchester for Enduring Freedom 1, taking the Q8. And then I was involved again in Iraq for number 2, where I was the warrant officer to 4-5 Commando. So I was in charge of all the intelligence picture, the gathering for taking of the Al4 Peninsula down in Basra, along with the SEAL Special Unit. So, that was, 2 eyes working together.
And I always point out that when Ian walks, he jingles. He's got so many medals. He's like that gunnery sergeant in, was it Heartbreak Ridge? When he turns up, I'm ashamed of myself, in comparison. But
10 minutes together. I went back to Afghanistan as well as a reservist to start off with, then in a full-time working in the CJ2 cell, doing intelligence and network exploitation. So that was quite an eye-opener as well, working out in the theatre of war. I was down in RC Cell for 2 years, working out of Kandahar and supporting the Brits, and then I eventually ended up in Kabul, changing all the logistics methodology with the systems they had. So that was quite an intense little period. Then Darren said, well, come and work for me, so all right then.
Hey, just putting the cells together. That's all it is. Yeah. Just putting the cells together. And, like I said, you know me, I'm passionate about Red Spy.
Yes, absolutely.
And obviously moving things forward. I always say, sometimes we're the best service that no one's ever heard of. And moving things forward, I was sitting there, power out, I didn't have a great deal to do. But I actually thought to myself, this is pretty good. Life is pretty good. Things are going well. Things are going exactly how I planned. And so, I'm just hoping that, we move everything forward. And I know...
Well, I seen from you just as a PO when I was a chief. But you always thought outside the box. It was never, you're thinking the bigger picture, moving forward. It wasn't just blinkered vision. You were open to every suggestion under the sun and developing it even more. So, you're the sort of guy that would work quite easily 18 hours a day, or some of them would call it, time over after about 6 hours. You were diligent, you had the vision, and I think you're bringing this to Red Spy as well. So, the work you do, I just have to applaud you, because it's brilliant, some of the stuff you're thinking about outside the box. Is the way penetration testing is should be moving in the next 10 years, and you're doing it already. So,
well, I think especially with 14, when we add in the machine learning, the repository decision support system, not easy to say at 6:22 a.m. But it's going to be there's a lot of things, there's a lot of moving parts, and one of the, I know being able to put something, just putting that part in itself is a game changer. Because I look what's out there, and I look at the fragmentation of tools, and I look at again, like we talk about, it's the art form, it's putting this all together. But we've got to be able to process it, put it to start pulling these fabrics, or creating a fabric and putting some of these tools together so they work together, and they work. They can work independently of each other, but the information flow has to come to that single point. It's that flow of information to the client that's going to make him giving that informed decision. Essentially, think about it. Go back to the military. That's what our job was, to take the information, put it all together, and inform command so they can make the best decisions possible. And essentially, that's what we're trying to do with Red Spy. And I think everything become a lot fragmented with, sort of the red teaming. We used to share a lot more in red teaming. But as the commercialization came into it, and the monetary value and of information and the monetarization of tools, we've started to see that part. So hopefully we're starting to put it back together again. And I think the metric of once a year was no good. We had to move it forward so we could show impact immediately to a risk. And I think that's where we're going. And I think that's, what I wanted to take this time to introduce, as I said, I'm going to go through some of the...
Can I just say that's why the two British companies that are interested over here find this a product such an interesting factor where it's all integrated together. We've got IDGen, big company over here, and it does its bit in America. But with the MOD coming, hopefully, what they see in it, it could be potential there big time, because I think that sort of market, this is where Red Spy will sit very comfortably indeed.
And again, and I always say it's not to replace the analyst, it's to enhance the analyst. It's to make so that he's not doing the repetitive, mundane stuff, because that's not what he's designed to do. He's designed to do the interpretive aspect. And, again, allowing the artist, allowing the pen tester to become the artist is much better, And even beyond that, I've talked about the marketplace and being able to monetize the artwork necessarily, or the creative content that, analysts will do, or other users of Red Spy will do. I think that's a future that hopefully will come to fruition, and we'll see, basically as people create content, they get paid for that content as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Once again, a bit innovation on your part, Darren, for that. 10 out of 10 for that idea, I'm completely 100% behind you on that view.
Well, Ian, I appreciate it, and as I said, I think we're lucky to have you at Red Spy. So what I'll do is I'll drop off here, and that will be the end of our interview. And hopefully we'll start doing a couple of these and talk about, and if people have questions, feel free to fling them out to us.
Okay, Darren.
Even though Chelsea finished above Arsenal this weekend, I will forgive you.
Some things don't change.
No, you're fine. I'll speak to you later, mate.
Goodbye.
Right.
Shall we play a game?
We got one person online. The workload is enough for like 10 users. I think we got a hacker.
Shall we play a game?
What are they doing to him? Breaking into his mind. It's like hacking a computer. All it takes is time.
Red alert! All hands to battle stations.
Hello, friend.
Welcome to Red Spy 365.
Shall we play a game?